Hello, citizens of the Sol System. Yeah, I know. But guess what?
Why did Space King give us these creatures instead of endless boys? It's simple. To tempt us from his path. As a test. Which is why they have these. Boobies.
I don't have those, so I don't count. For those of you new to the franchise, welcome. If you're a veteran, also welcome. The veterans know this, but for you rookies, you are solely unprepared for the lore and knowledge you will obtain. This video isn't going to go into the lore, it's more of, here's some options to help you get into it, and I wanted to briefly share my experience because sharing is caring. Of course, there is no right or wrong way to get into Warhammer. A friend could give you a sermon, you can read the books, look up everything online, even if it's just the Warhammer website. Simply walk into a Warhammer store if there is one in your town. Watch the many YouTube videos explaining the lore. I highly recommend Luton 09 and recommend this video for the Horus Heresy. Maybe you played Space Marine 2 and wanted to know more, or you can do what I did by diving into the Warhammer wiki and drowning. I'm actually one of the newer fans that got into it a couple months before Space Marine 2 came out. So how I became a fan was I had a friend who asked me if I knew what Warhammer was. I knew two things, something called Space Marines and there were Space Orcs. That's it. The name Warhammer never really caught my eye, even though I just said Space Orcs. I thought it leaned more towards fantasy, which there are two, Age of Sigmar and the Old World. I do like Elder Scrolls and Lord of the Rings is pretty cool, but I tend to lean more towards sci-fi. Anyway, when I started to look up Warhammer, I looked at the website and saw the different factions. Curiosity about them led me to a Warhammer wiki. At the time, I didn't think the lore was so dense because I used to be a huge Star Wars fan and would read the Wikipedia all the time. Oh my gosh, there is so much to read. And then you have all the novels and the codexes. The first novel I read was The Infinite and the Divine. I wouldn't recommend it for new beginners. Thankfully, I had some background knowledge of the Necrons since they were one of the first factions to catch my eye. I would recommend the Horus Heresy to start with as it kind of gives an introduction into the Warhammer universe and it shows how 40k became, well, grim dark 40k. But here's a website that lists several books to start with. In it, it advises not to start with the Horus Heresy. Of course, you can start whatever you like. I'm just the type of person who likes to understand how Part B came from Part A. Funnily enough, there are kids' books. I think they're for 12-year-olds. I don't think really young kids should get into the lore, obviously. I don't have kids, but if I did, I just let them paint the minis and maybe look at the codex books. Speaking of the codex books, you don't need to buy them for the stats of the tabletop game. There are index cards you can buy. That's all the advice I can give on the tabletop game. I don't play it and probably won't unless I had a boyfriend who was into it. I'm just here for the lore. I just get the codexes for the artwork and the tidbit of lore it has in them. The first one I bought was the Dark Angels. It was about $35 plus tax. I wanted to buy the Tyranid one because the starter Tyranids were the first minis I bought, but it cost $60. Why is it more expensive when it's the same thickness as the Dark Angels one?
Why?
The Space Marine one I get because it's a thicker book. I know the Tyranid Codex talks about a whole faction rather than just a sliver of one, but still, it should be way thicker to make sense of the cost. It should not cost that much. Okay, money rant over. Don't feel bad if you don't immediately understand what's going on in the lore. It's pretty dense and deep, so just chip away at it. I remember reading a text my friend had sent, and I think he was talking about the Primarchs, the Primacies, or something or other. Anyway, I had no clue what he was talking about at the time. The lore is so vast and dense, it's hard to absorb it all at once. Being a fan for about 1.5 years now, I understand a lot more, but still have so much to discover. Once as you have a lot of the basic lore down, it's pretty easy to follow, except for all the contradictions, what is canon is now isn't canon, and the new lore that's being currently added. Since I used to be a Star Wars fan and I enjoyed playing the Mass Effect series, the outlook of Warhammer 40k was kind of a jarring experience. Reading about the Imperium, I thought they were ignorant a-holes. Why weren't they creating alliances? Where was the trade? What's wrong with them? Going deeper into the lore, I finally understood. Instead of
For the Republic!
It's
For the Emperor!
Man, Star Wars is just child's play compared to the grimdark universe of Warhammer, which is one of the things I actually like about it. Also, I didn't realize how much the Imperium was into skulls. Had I known this much sooner, I would have gotten into the franchise a long time ago. There isn't too much of the lore I don't like. I know some aren't fond of certain factions or characters, even certain changes to the lore. I know my least favorite faction is the Votan, not because I don't like them or anything, I just forget that they exist. Apparently, if you kill the Salamander Primarch Vulcan, he would just resurrect himself. I kind of don't agree with this. As I know of, I don't think it's due to chaos powers. If he can do it, why didn't the Emperor make all the Primarchs like that? They're demigod warriors, right? So why not? I know at this point in time, Games Workshop is trying to get more women into the hobby. I don't know why they are bothering to do so, as war just doesn't appeal to the majority of women. As a woman, the advice I can give Games Workshop to getting women interested is not through Space Marine women or boss babes or a romantic love story between a Black Templar and a Sister of Battle. It's Squishmallow Tyranids. Trust me, I would know. I'd buy one. Side note, Dreadnoughts are the biggest sweethearts in the franchise. Changed my mind about that. I want to mention that I actually like playing video games. I wouldn't call myself a gamer though, now being a full-fledged adult. I don't have the time as much anymore. The only Warhammer video game I've played so far is Space Marine 2. I've had a good time with it. It's nice to rip and tear into Xenos and Heretics after a crappy day. I plan on playing the Dawn of War Definitive Edition at some point. I used to play a lot of Age of Empires back in the day. I still do when I get the chance. Will I play Dawn of War 2? Probably not. Supposedly there's a Dawn of War 3, but that's just a myth. Dawn of War 4 looks good, but with today's world of video games, I take it with a grain of salt and just wait for it to come out. I saw the new Total War Warhammer trailer. I know there are older Total Wars, but I'm probably just going to play the new one, if it's good anyway. Bolt gun looks like a blast. The taunt key was a beautiful idea. I'm not into FPSs too much anymore. I'm more into open worlds like Skyrim, but there's some days shooting demons is really nice. I know there are Warhammer mobile games, but I just don't have any interest in them. Not that they are bad games, I just never got into mobile gaming. We all know Titus, right? Here's what he looks like in the game. Here's his face in Secret Level. Why is he hot?
Oh no, he's hot!
What is wrong with his old look? When I look at him in his new look, I think, wow, he's so handsome. I just feel guilty looking at him. Like, I'm not supposed to be attracted to a Space Marine. I know there's some women out there who are attracted to Gadriel, which I admit he's cute. And then you have the Blood Ravens Marine from the Dawn of War 4 trailer, who is also good looking. But at least that's both their original looks. Titus is just why? He looks a lot like Henry Cavill. I bet they are prepping Titus to be played by him in his Warhammer 40k show. That's just the theory I have. I wanted to talk about the real money draining activity, the miniatures. I'm going to make a separate video on that. I'm not a professional painter, but I might give some tips as I've learned the don'ts to painting these little guys. Obviously, you can just search YouTube for all the painting tutorials. I wanted to talk more in this video, but it's getting long for me to edit, so stay tuned for part 2. I'm planning on making some life advice videos. It seems like everyone needs it today, and since I'm older than Google and remember a time when you couldn't use the internet and landline at the same time, I think I have enough wisdom gained to share. Thanks for listening. God bless and Emperor protects.